You're listening to the Multifamily Mentor Show.
My name is Terrence Doyle.
And I'm Chris Lopez. You probably know us from the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Ride Along Show. Well, now we're talking everything multifamily. We bring in top industry experts from around the country to come join us in our Denver studio for an in-depth, in-person conversation.
We're going to be diving deep into deals, underwriting, raising capital, and everything in between. Join the conversation.
What's up, Bigger Pockets? We have a great show today. As you know, this is the Tribe of Multifamily Mentors show at Bigger Pockets. And Terrence, we have one of the mentors of mentors for the multifamily space in the studio today. Who do we have?
Yeah, we have Rod Khleif in the studio, live and in person. The man, the myth, the legend. He's here. He's excited. He's got his pint of coffee next to him. This guy is jacked up on everything, and he's ready to go. I think this is going to be one of the best shows that we've ever done, and I can't wait to get into it. So, Rod, welcome to the show.
Legend in his own mind. Okay, let's be clear on that.
No, you're a legend in the streets. You're a legend. You're a legend. And anyways, Rod, you've got so much great stuff to share that let's just get right into it. People know your background. They know what you've done. So tell us how you got started in real estate. How did the journey begin?
Sure. Well, I'm going to take you back a ways because it ties into what I want to talk about today with you guys. And so I immigrated to this country when I was 6 years old with my mother's Vancia, my brother Albert. I was born in the Netherlands, wooden shoes, windmills. And we ended up in Denver, Colorado, where I lived for 30 years. And we grew up struggling. I remember we bought expired food, drank powdered milk with our cereal because that's all we could afford. My mom thought milk was healthy at the time. And I wore clothes from the Goodwill and the Salvation Army all the way through junior high school till I lied about my age and got a job at Burger King on Pecos and 84th, where these guys know where that is because that's here in Denver. I was 14 and I was tall, so I was able to get a job there so I could buy my own clothes. But we struggled. And and I'm sure you've got listeners that had it harder than we did or maybe have it harder than we did now. But see, I knew I wanted more. And luckily, my mom had an incredible work ethic and she babysat kids so we'd have enough money to eat. We always had a house full of kids. And she was a bit of an entrepreneur. She invested in the stock market and made money. But she also bought the house across the street from us when I was about 14 for $30,000. And then when I was 17, she told me she made $20,000 in her sleep. And I'm like, what? You made 20 grand, you didn't do anything? It just went up in value? And she's like, yeah. And I said, well, screw college, Mom. I'm sorry. I'm getting into real estate. So I got my real estate broker's license right when I turned 18 here in Denver, which at the time you could do with experience. So I wasn't just an agent. I was a broker. I could have my own office. They got smart. Now you need some experience. But so I was going to be rich selling other people's houses. And so, listen, I listen. A lot of people make good money as a broker, but it wasn't for me long term. And so, my first year I made like $8,000. My second year maybe $10,000. But my third year I made over $100,000, which back in 1981 was a pretty decent chunk of change. And so, what happened between year 2 and year 3 that caused me to 10x my income? Well, what happened was I met a guy, actually was dating his daughter. I met a guy that taught me about the importance of mindset and psychology, how truly 80 to 90% of your success in anything is just that, your mindset and your psychology. Only 10 to 20% is the mechanical information, the vehicle, as it were, real estate, entrepreneurship, a franchise, whatever it is, stock market investing. That's the vehicle. It's primarily the ability to take action, the ability to push through fear, the ability to get uncomfortable. And so, fast forward to today, I've owned over 2,000 houses that I rented long-term. I've owned thousands of apartment units. In 2006, my net worth went up $17 million while I slept. And if you want to do the math on that, it's $8,374 an hour, which of course I did. And anybody that would hold still long enough knew that about me. And I got a head so big I could barely fit it through a door. I thought I was a real estate god. And when that happens, God or the universe or whatever you believe will give you a nice little smack. Well, that was 2008 for me. I lost that $17 million and a lot more. I lost $50 million in 2008. And so one of the things that I enjoy talking about that I'd love to drill down on with you guys is the mindset it took to have $50 million to lose in the first place, but then more importantly, the mindset it took to recover from losing that much money to the success that I'm blessed to have today. I mean, back in the 1920s, people jumped out of buildings for losing less than that proportionately. And, I'd love to drill down on that if you guys
Yeah, let's do it. So what was it? I mean, how did you dig yourself out of losing $50 million? I mean, if that was me, I have a wife and 2 kids. I mean, it would be hard for me to get out of bed for months and months and months.
Well, there were a few factors, but let me tell you the most important one. And it was reassociating with what I wanted. And so, one of the first things we do at my boot camps is we do this goal setting workshop on steroids because, how do you get anything in life if you don't know what the heck it is? I mean, you need to know what you want with clarity to go after it. And so, I reassociated with what I wanted and why I wanted it. So, I was, for example, I was supposed to have 800 people at a boot camp in Orlando in May of last year, and we all know what happened with that. And I'd sold a lot of tickets for that thing, and I was freaking out. It's like, what am I going to do? So I had to innovate. I had to pivot. And let me share that with your listeners as well. Maybe you're in that place right now that you need to innovate or pivot and reinvent yourself because you're struggling. Maybe you worked in a service industry that got decimated by this crisis, or, and don't fear that. But I will say this, that if you're listening to Terrence and Chris here and watching this podcast, you're a leader. There's no question you're a leader. And the world needs more leaders right now. And so I would tell you, pay attention to what you're focused on. Number one, make sure you're focused on what you want, not what you don't want, because whatever you focus on is going to grow, both positive and negative. And so be very, very careful. Like, stand guard at the door to your mind. Don't get me started on the media right now or politics. Good God! But the news isn't there to inform us. It's there to startle us or scare the hell out of us. And so bring in the good stuff. Like on my podcast, I do these little clips called "Own Your Power," and they're really motivational. I don't care if you're not even doing real estate; you'll get benefit from those. But forget, even if it's not my stuff, go on YouTube. Bring in the good motivational stuff and avoid the negative stuff because, again, whatever you focus on grows larger. So, and in fact, I'll give you an example of this. They asked Mother Teresa if she was anti-war, if she was pro-peace. Actually, the truth of it was they asked her to go to an anti-war rally, and she said, no, if you have a pro-peace rally, I'll go.
Right.
And so it's just a play on words. I get people that call me and say, I've got all this student loan debt. How do I get out of it? I said, wrong question. Focus on making so much money that the student loan debt's irrelevant. So again, pay really close attention to your focus. But the point is, if you have to innovate or pivot, don't be afraid of that. Just go after it. Some of the biggest companies in history were made in tougher times. So don't fear that. But let me describe, because at these boot camps, the first thing we do is this goal setting workshop. So let me describe it so that, if you want to do it on your own, if you don't have to come.
It's a great exercise. Yeah. I encourage everyone to take notes. Take notes, get into a quiet place and go through this. Take the time, press pause, go through every single one of these things because I've done it and I've learned a lot and I've gotten a lot of value and it's really helped me in my business. So I really want everyone to pay attention and really digest every single one of these because it's really good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. It's kind of evolved over the years. I got some of it from Tony Robbins, who I spent some time with, quite a bit of time with, and then I've added my own little nuances. But so what you want to do is pick an hour when you have a lot of energy, okay? And don't, make sure you're well hydrated while I get a drink of water. Make sure that you don't do it after you have a heavy meal. And sit down and write down everything you could ever possibly want in life. All the stuff. There's nothing wrong with stuff. Write down the houses, the cars, the boats, the jet skis, the planes, the motorcycles, the jewelry, all the stuff. Write it down. Also write down, all the things you want to do in your lifetime, the places you want to go. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to climb every mountain over 14,000 feet. Maybe you want to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. I did that about a year ago, and I'll never freaking do it again, but it's off the list. Maybe write down how much money you want in the bank in 3 years, how much money you want in the bank in 10 years. Write down how much cash flow you want from your whatever business you're going to do. If it's going to be real estate, passive cash flow or active cash flow, either one, from your real estate endeavors in 3 years. What's your cash flow going to be? What's it going to be in 10 years? Write that down. Write down also what you want to learn in this lifetime. If you want to learn a foreign language, write that down. If you want to learn a particular skill set, if it's multifamily, I hope you'll come see me. But write down all of these things that you want to learn in your lifetime. So it's not just the stuff, okay? It's everything you want to do, be, or have. And lastly, write down who you want to help. We will do more for others than we'll ever do for ourselves. And again, this is the fuel to get you to take action. It's never about the goals. It's about who you become on your path to the goals. But you need the goals. You got to have them. That's what juices you and gets you out of bed and gets you motivated and gets you to get up early and stay up late and do whatever the heck you have to do to crush it in this business. And so write down who you want to help. Like I bought my parents a house in Florida on a canal when my dad was alive, bought them a car, took them on cruises. So write down who you want to do something for.
And you've helped a lot of families with meals as well, right?
Yes. I'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Whatever you're passionate about. Maybe you have a passion like helping children, like helping the elderly, like the environment, animals, whatever it is, write that down and incorporate that into your life, because we'll do more for others than we'll ever do for ourselves. And again, this is the fuel to get you to, many of us have these limiting belief systems, or we have fears, or we're comfortable. God forbid we're comfortable. And the comfort zone's a warm place, but nothing freaking grows there, right?
Nope.
So you got to be able to push through that and get out of that. And so you've written down all these things, and if you're analytical, please don't stop and analyze your answers. Just keep writing. You can always scratch it out later, okay? Don't let that freaking pen leave the paper. Make sure you stay hydrated, high energy, and just write down every big little thing you could ever want. And then once you can't think of another thing, I want you to put a time limit on each goal. How long is it going to take you to achieve it? And put a number of years. Put 1, 3, 5, even 10 or 20. Recognizing that as human beings, we will overestimate what we can do in a year and massively underestimate what we can do in 5, 10, 20 years.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I'll give you great examples of that in a minute here. But so put a time limit on it. And again, if you're analytical, don't overthink that either. Just guess. It's not going to matter for what we're doing. Just guess at it. Now, once you've got your time limit on each goal, I want you to pick your number one goal. I mean, that goal, when you get it, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know you've arrived when you achieve that goal. Now, if there's 2 or 3 that are equally exciting for you, just pick one, because it's not going to matter for what we're going to do next. Just a couple more steps. So pick your number one goal, then pick your top 3 one-year goals, okay? Put those on a separate sheet of paper. And at this point, you are ahead of 99.9% of the people on the planet that do a couple of New Year's resolutions that are forgotten. Statistically, I think 60 to 80% are forgotten by February or something. So you're ahead of 99% of the people on the planet. But there's a couple more steps. So you've got your 4 goals. Put them on a separate sheet of paper. Leave some room in between them. By the way, if you're not interested in coming to my boot camp, go to my Rod Khleif official page. If you go to January 2nd, I did this whole exercise with music, and there's a guide you can download. It's free. And if you go to my Rod Khleif official page, you're going to have to scroll through the feed until you get to January 2nd, but it's there and you can watch it. So if you don't want to do the boot camp, I'll guide you through this process. It's professionally done.
January
it's really
2nd, 2021?
Yes.
All
yes.
Right.
Yeah, I did it the January 1st the year before, but the 2nd was on a Saturday, and that's I had my team. Yeah, anyway, so January 2nd, come but if we do this at my boot camp as well. So you've got your top 4 goals, which is great, but the real juice is why those goals are an absolute freaking must to achieve. So you want to write a paragraph under each goal why it has to happen. It's not a should, it's a freaking must. We say I should be a better parent, I should exercise more, I should eat better, and we should all over ourselves, right? so it's got to be a must. And so write down why it has to happen and use emotionally charged words to describe why it's a why. So use words like amazing and incredible and unbelievable and beautiful. Use words like that, because words will juice you. They will drive you. And again, this is the fuel. This is the fuel to get your butt out of bed early and stay up late and work a Saturday, and still have time for your family to work, frankly, to grind like most people won't for 2 or 3 years, to live the rest of your life like most people can't. Okay? And this is the fuel that gets you to do that. So you're going to write so that, I can show my kids what incredible success looks like. So I can show my wife or husband what it means to live a life of incredible abundance. Make it whatever is going to juice you, use that so that we can have the freedom to do whatever we want, whenever we want, wherever we want, bring whoever we want. Whatever it is that's going to push you, write that down. And then put one underneath each goal. Put a sentence or two or a paragraph under each goal. And there could be some redundancy between them. That's fine. Don't worry about it. But this is the fuel. Now, before you leave this piece, I want you to put some pain in there if you don't achieve the goal, and make it freaking painful. Why? Because as human beings, we'll do more to avoid pain than gain pleasure. And again, this is what's going to be the fuel to push you. So you might say that I don't feel like a failure. So I don't fail my kids. So I don't fail my husband or wife, so that, I don't live a life of regret. There was this nurse in Australia, a hospice nurse, that took care of patients when they were about to die. And she asked him a question. And the question was, do you have any regrets? And she wrote a book about it. Her name was Bronnie Ware. And the book is The 5 Regrets of Dying. And then, you know what the number one regret was, guys? It was not living the life I could have lived, living someone else's life, not doing what I know I'm capable of. Screw that, my friends, okay? So this is the fuel that prevents that from happening. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says you have to have a burning desire. This is what gets you that burning desire, so that you take action on your dreams. So you don't have that regret. So, let me tell you something. Those of you, that fear failure, fear regret much more. Fear being in the same freaking place you are a year from now than that you are right now, unless you absolutely love where you are right now. Okay? So fear that instead. So you've got your positive and negative reasons why. There's one more piece. You need to declare to the world or get pictures of the things that you want. And you just asked me, Terrence, a little earlier about sign above my bed, and I have them. In fact, it's funny. When I was doing my live events, my kids actually helped me, and that's the most common question they get. Does he actually do this shit? Does he actually scream out at the top of his lungs his incantations and have these pictures all over the place? Yes, he does. They laugh about it. But anyway, so, let me give you some examples of manifesting.
So what's over your bed right now?
I don't really want to say the number.
Okay.
I don't really want to say the number.
Well, you started out with
it's
what?
A little
What did you start out with?
It used to be $100,000 a month.
Is what you used to have.
I used to be above my bed, $100,000 a month, and pictures of what I'll show you an example of this. But yeah, it's more than that now. But I don't want to be too pretentious.
I got it,
yeah. And by the way, guys, I'm going to give you some examples of things that I've done in my life. Please know that I'm not trying to brag. I'm only hoping to inspire you, those of you listening, to what's possible. So I'm going to give you some examples, but let me give you some public examples. Jim Carrey is a great example, the actor. When he was flat broke, he wrote himself a check for $10 million, okay? And for those of you millennials, a check is what we used to pay for things. Anyway,
Venmo.
not Venmo. Anyway, so he wrote himself a check for $10 million, and that's how much money he made for Dumb and Dumber, okay? And another more recent example is Demi Lovato. When she was unknown, she posted on social media, "I'm going to sing the national anthem in the Super Bowl." Not this last one that just happened, the one before. Go see who sang the national anthem. I'll give you some examples for me. When I lived here in Denver and I was 18, and if you read my book, you'll see that I had a bus bench at the end of my street, which was a complete waste of time and money, except it made my mom proud.
Oh, but now I want to see the picture of the bus bench.
Oh, I got to find that picture for you.
Yeah.
That'll be a real comic relief. Anyway, so and I had my leather jacket. I didn't even own a sport coat. I had a leather coat on when I was, anyway.
Mullet?
I
Did you have the
digress.
mullet?
No, it was
mullet
worse
and
than
the leather
mullet.
jacket?
It was helmet head. It was total helmet head, man. It took me an hour to blow dry it. But anyway, so I was a broker, and I figured I had to have a 4-door car to show other people houses, right? So I bought this bone ugly Ford 4-door Granada. I mean, a real piece of you know what. And but it had a bench seat in the front, but I figured I had to have that to show other people houses to make money in real estate, right? Well, I worked with the guy I was telling you about, taught me about mindset, and the first one to teach me, Tony, was after that. But he had 2 Corvettes, and he let me drive one. And that's a really important piece. If there's something you want, go experience it. If it's a car, go test drive it. If it's a house, that you want, go to open houses or the houses like that. Yeah. In fact, back before COVID, in February of last year, Valentine's Day, I took my bride to Miami, stayed at a really nice hotel, and went to the Miami Yacht Show. And spent way too much money. Bought this, I spent $200,000 on the watch and boat and jet skis. Just stupid. I wish I had that money back now, because I think there's opportunity coming. I went to the yacht show, and I took Tiffy's my wife. I took her to the Amalfi Coast in Italy. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. It's spectacular, and there's all kinds of yachts, hundreds of yachts. And I told her, baby, one day we're going to rent or buy a yacht. We're going to go around the Horn of Italy, Spain, Greece, Croatia. It's just spectacular. You see these villages up the hillside. Anyway, so I BS'd my way onto these 150, 200-foot yachts, flashed the watch and talked smack and got into these yachts. And I sat in the captain's chair, and I laid on the bed, and I visualized, walked around like I own the place. Why? Because it freaking works, okay? So I know some of you analytical ones are going, oh, for God's sakes, get on with the real estate stuff. Please hear me when I say this. This is more important than the real estate stuff, okay? Because again, if it was just knowledge, there'd be a bunch of wealthy librarians and wealthy college professors. It's the freaking do and it's the keep doing. It's the get up when you get your butt kicked and your nose bloodied, like I did. Anyway, so I BS my way onto these yachts because I know it works. I know that works. So get pictures of your goals. In fact, let me show you something. I brought this for a reason. This is my planner. Okay, I'm a dinosaur. I use a freaking paper planner.
So if you guys are on YouTube, tab back over the screen and you get the sneak peek into Rod's
So I don't know if you can show this on the videos here, but
point it to that camera right there.
Okay, so this used to be what's called a day timer. It's now Franklin Covey. Luckily, the hole's lined up because in the back of this thing, I've got pictures that I've had for 20 years. You can see they're in plastic, and I'll hold it up here. So the first pictures are my gratitude pictures. My kids are 30 and 26, so you can see how. So they're pictures of my kids when they were young. Now, this is really important, guys, because everything starts from a place of gratitude. If there's anything you want in your life, it comes from a place of gratitude. You want to manifest goals into your life. You manifest them by being grateful as if you already have them. And I'll talk about that in a second. So I've got pictures of my kids when they were young. Then I've got pictures of the houses that I wanted. I forgot to mention this. Back, when we talked about getting things, visualizing and having goals that were 20 years out. Back when I lived here in Denver, I knew I always wanted to live on the beach. And there's no beach in Denver, right? And except maybe a Cherry Creek Reservoir here. But anyway, so, I would visualize the palm trees and the surf and the waves and the sand. And 20 years later, I built this $8 million, 10,000 square foot home mansion on the beach, which was unthinkable when I was 18. And so back to goals for a second. And I forgot to say this. This is so important. Take the lid off your brain. Imagine if you write it down when you're doing that exercise that you're going to get it, which is not outside the realm of reality. Okay? Because what it does is it triggers something in your brain called your reticular activating system. And what that is just this filter, subconscious filter that points our brain in the direction it thinks we're interested in. The greatest example is when you first buy a vehicle. You never really notice them, and then they're everywhere, right? Were they there before? Of course they were. That's your reticular activating system, and the same thing works with your goals. And that's why you want to experience your goals as much as possible. So I built this place on the beach. I mean, it's spectacular. I owned the beach on one side. I had my boats on the backside. It was called a Gulf to Bay. It was just a spectacular home. But anyway, and this reminded me of it because I've got pictures here, and this top picture here looks just like the view from that house on the beach. I had 10-foot high glass that was 80 feet wide, all butt together. I had travertine floors like that. This bottom pictures look just like the compound I live in now. I have a compound. I've got 6 buildings on 2 acres. I've got a beautiful guest house on the water. I've got a big main house. I've got a media building where I've got my video studio now where I do my live stream events and posts and stuff like that. I've got 6-car garage. I've got a beautiful exercise facility. So anyway, that looks like that. Then I've got, stupid like watches. I've got a few $100,000 worth of watches. I forgot to give my personal examples of the cars. I didn't finish that thought process.
Oh yeah, we were talking about the Ford you bought.
Okay, so I'm all over the place here today. I need more coffee. Well, anyway, so I had that 4-door Granada, and he let me drive the Corvette. And so I'm like, this is freaking amazing. And I got a picture of a Corvette out of a magazine here because way before the internet hadn't even been thought of. And I put that in the visor of my Granada. Within a year or two, I had a beautiful Corvette. So, every time I sat in it, it was right there. And again, please know what I'm going to share with you. I'm not bragging here. I just want to share examples to hopefully inspire you. So this was when the TV show Magnum P.I. was out. And the actor's name was Tom Selleck. He was a detective, and he drove, first time I'd seen an exotic car. He had a Ferrari 308, and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I got a picture of that actual car, and I put on the visor of my Corvette. Within a year or two, I had a Maserati. It looked just like it. Last example, I'm the guy that always wanted a Lamborghini. I had the posters in my bedroom, and you're growing up, and my son, when he was 9 years old, collected models of exotic cars. And he had the Ferraris and the Maseratis and the Lamborghinis. And he had a model of the exact same color and style that I had, that I ended up getting, which I ultimately wrecked. But this reminded me, I had this picture of Lamborghinis before I ever got the damn thing, okay? And then, Rolls Royce, Bentley, all this stuff that I got because I had pictures. So go out there and get pictures, put them around you, put them on your screensaver, put them on your wall.
So put them everywhere.
Put them everywhere because that's how you get this stuff, okay? So anyway,
So we were talking about this before we started the show, and you said save that question because you really thought the response was going to be valuable. So, I have somewhat of an analytical brain. I also have a dreamer brain similar to you, but I'm around a lot of engineers and analytical people, so I can appreciate where they're coming from.
Yep.
And right now they're listening. They're like, this doesn't make any sense. It doesn't check the box in my brain. So what do you have to say to the people in the audience that are like, Rod,
let me tell you.
1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 here. I can go post all these pictures on my wall, and I'm just gonna, how am I gonna? That doesn't make sense in my brain.
Well, you actually have to take freaking action, okay?
Right.
Let me just say that. You can't just wish and hope and pray that you're going to get this stuff. You actually have to go do something. And that's the problem, for a lot of analytical people. And I will tell you, my most successful students by far are the ones that are the most analytical. But they're the hardest to get to actually take action and, like, for example, sign up for our program because they have to check off every single box.
Right.
And, and they get caught in analysis paralysis.
Right.
And so... if you're.
So what do you say to them? So when you meet with the analytical,
you got to make a move. You've got to get, like Dr. Martin Luther King said, you take that first step and the next step will be revealed. Lao Tzu said thousands of years ago, that journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. You've got to take that first step and just realize, for example, you can drive all the way across the United States from where I live in Sarasota to LA at night, even seeing 50 feet in front of you. It's the same thing with your goals. You take, and you don't know what obstacles you'll run into, but you'll make it. And it's the same thing with your goals. So if that's you, if you're analytical and you feel like you need to know everything about this business, I could give you examples of deals where we have built 2 deals I can think of top of my head, where had we waited to know everyone we were doing business with and waited to make an offer on these 2 deals, we would have lost out on $10 million in equity that we built in each one of these, okay? Like one was over Labor Day, and my partner had to write the contract over Labor Day. Had we waited to know, to check off every single box, we would have never gotten it. And so, it's the same thing. That's an analogy to use, and you've just got to take action. That's what I would say to you. You've got to push through the fear. You got to, and that's why this burning desire, why the goals are so important, that to hopefully, push people to actually take action and take that first step, and then it's like a flywheel. It starts building momentum. But you've got to, and it's the hardest, no question. It's just like the law of the first deal. That deal's the hardest as well. I see it with my students all the time. They it takes them 8 months to a year to get a deal, and they get that one done. Next thing you know, they've got 6. I'm like, what the hell happened here? And it's that first one. It's the scariest, the most stressful.
Yeah, get the monkey off your back.
That's it. Too.
But Terrence, I love your question. It made me think of like the other side of the spectrum. Because we were talking about breakfast this morning. I learned business, and I got introduced to business through MLM, multi-level marketing. Lots of pros, lots of cons on there. But what I noticed in the industry was there's a lot of seminars and self-help and rah. If you guys ever watched The Secret, affirmations, mindset.
I've given away thousands of copies of The Secret.
Yeah,
and when the first time I saw it, I'm like, holy shit, that's what I've been doing for the last 30 years.
But here's what I noticed in my sphere: a lot of people are like, oh, I love it, but then they would sit on their butt all day and just do
dream
affirmations
about it.
all day. I'm like, cool, that's great, but affirmations alone and me just sit there manifesting.
The Secret left that piece out.
Doesn't manifest my bank account.
Yeah.
So what's the other spectrum on
The
this?
Secret left that piece out. You actually have to take action.
Yeah.
Massive freaking action. Okay, and that's one of my catchphrases is just take massive freaking action. You'll figure it out. Go do it. Don't sit and dream about it. Just dream about it. You got to dream about it, but don't just dream about it. You've got to do it.
So you've got to be around the right people, which you talked about. And you got to take action. So let's continue on with the story because I really love the next part. So 2008, right? You have a big loss. You talk about $50 million. And then what did you do after that and your mindset? And how did you get to where you are today, where you've done thousands and thousands of transactions, you've helped hundreds and hundreds of people. Some of them have been on you have thousands of people that have been, some of them have been on our podcast and said you were the reason why they built successful business. So walk us through the next phase of your story, because it's incredible.
Well, let me say this to all of you listening, and that is, and again, I forget what we did in the Q&A and what we're doing now. It's about adding value, bottom line. And I when I started my podcast, which I'm blessed to say is now over 10 million downloads, that was my only focus. In fact, I started my podcast to give people because when I was losing everything in 2008, it was the houses that pulled me down. My multifamily did just fine. It pulled back about 11%, but it would have easily survived if I hadn't cross-collateralized my multifamily, meaning I got loans on both the multifamily and packages of houses, so I lost everything. But I thought I was smart to save 0.5% interest or whatever to refinance together. But the multifamily would have easily survived, and so I hate asking for money. So I thought, I'll start a podcast. I won't have to ask for money if I've got this podcast, and I'll tell people my story. So if they're going to buy and hold, for God's sakes, do multifamily, don't do single family. It's just easier. It's faster. It's you scale faster, easier to manage, logistically easier. And so, I used to tell people in my first episodes of my podcast, I'll never sell you anything. Now I'm a liar because I do coaching and all sorts of things, but I never intended to. It's like you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? And so, I when we hit 1 million downloads, I'm like, okay, knucklehead, you better do something with this now. And so I wrote a book, gave away 20,000 copies of the book, but I'm adding value,
right.
And I loved it. And so. I don't know if we talked about it on this show or if we did it on the Q&A about the wealthiest people on the planet are the ones that add the most value. And so, and I got that memo when one of my mentors, Tony Robbins, told me that, and it stuck with me. So I focus on adding as much value as I possibly can, and it has come back to me. It's just the way God, the universe, whatever you believe works. Whatever you give, you receive. You want love, give love. You want happiness, give happiness. You want money, give of your time or give money, and you get it back tenfold, 100-fold. And that's how it's been for me.
I think here's a good time to transition. Let's talk about, you're still doing deals.
Oh, yeah.
You've got a pretty big multifamily portfolio that you're already a part of, and you're growing it. You've got a new partner. So why don't we talk about the latest deal that you've closed in Dallas? Sure. I think it was like 270 units, Cottonwood.
Yep.
So why don't you give us a little background? How did you find it? Who found it? Did someone bring it to you? Was it one of your students? I mean, here's a good way to talk about your whole ecosystem and how you do deals and how people can get involved with you.
Yeah, no. So we've done over 2,000 doors in the last 2 years. Everyone's been with a student, or students, multiple students. In fact, what we do when we bring investors in, we have them come out and help with the due diligence. Like we'll have 20 or 30 people there, students and investors come and help walk units with us. They get to see behind the scenes. Yeah. I really try to focus on educating our investors. It's like anything. If you're going to invest passively in a deal, for God's sakes, you should know a little bit about the business, yes? So if you're listening and you're thinking you just want to be a passive investor, come spend 2 days with me. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to give somebody hundreds of thousands of dollars unless I've got some basic, and stock market included, unless I've got a bond market or whatever, some basic understanding of the business. So, I try to spend time teaching even our passive investors in the deals. But so that we have 2 other assets in Dallas, and one's called the Millennium and the other one's called North Creek, and they're both within a couple miles or 3 minutes of this particular asset. And it's really funny. I was interviewing John Griggs, the owner of Presidium Group. I think they have 15 to 20,000 doors, and we'd finished up the interview, and we're just I was talking to him about something. I said, "Yeah, we just bought this Cottonwood deal," and he goes, "That's my deal. We sold it to you." And my partner Robert at the time had handled it, but it's a beautiful asset. And now because he does a lot of private equity, he works with family offices. He had incredible financing on that asset. But let me talk about the market first, right. Okay? So we had that deal. It was actually from a broker that we bought, I believe, North Creek from. So it was through a broker relationship. But we like Dallas because it has led job growth over the last several years, and in the country, like number 1 in the country, And so, they added 127,000 jobs in 2019. And guys, that's the most important factor when you're buying multifamily is jobs. When you're evaluating a market, you want to make sure some things are growing, population, income, but definitely jobs, okay? And so, that's one of the first things we look at. We look at historical unemployment in that market as well. How is it compared to national unemployment? We look at the submarket. How did Dallas do compared to Texas? And we want to see it doing better than these things. And a lot of people moving from other states to Texas right now because of all the the political stuff going on.
Like a few million Californians?
Well, there's that. Yes, there is that. There is that. And the other thing that we look for when we're looking at jobs is I talked about did I talk about on the Q&A or on this call about why I crashed and burned in 08? Do you recall when I did that?
No, yeah, that was a Q&A. That was a great story if you want to go back.
I lost $50 million in 2008. Let me tell you why. So I had 800 houses and I had multiple apartment complexes. It was the houses that pulled me down. And one of the factors there was let me tell all the factors. So let me just repeat myself. I'll just be a little redundant here because we did a Q&A earlier, so it's kind of in my brain. Wasn't sure what we talked about. So Florida has no state income tax, so the property taxes are higher, which impacts what? Cash flow, right? I had properties in wind and flood zones, so the insurance is higher, which impacts what? Cash flow. But the things that killed me, there were two things that killed me. I had 800 houses that were 2 hours north of me and 2 hours south and everywhere in between, so the logistics were really challenging. But I thought Florida was recession-proof. Again, I use the phrase, I used to tell my friends, 80 million baby boomers are getting old and getting cold. And so, I thought Florida was recession-proof. Well, I was wrong. And I'm wrong regularly, but that was a big one. That was a $50 million mistake. But that was one of the things was the logistics. And let me tell you why. Let's say I sent a maintenance guy to one of my apartment complexes. Everything there is the same. The HVAC is the same. The plumbing is the same. The door locks are the same. The appliances are the same. So you can stockpile parts and a guy could be in and out in an hour. Well, if I had to send a maintenance guy to one of my houses, one of my 800 houses, it could be an hour and a half each way. They'd have to go see what was wrong. Every house is different. Then they'd have to go find a Home Depot or a Lowe's where we'd have an account. That could be an hour round trip. And, invariably they forget something and have to go back. And so what took an hour at one of my apartment complexes took all day at one of my 800 houses. And these 800 houses were C-class assets. C-class assets, there's A, B, C, and D. D is the hood, A is the best. C-class assets have a lot more maintenance than an A and B asset. It's just the way it works. And so, so it was a lot of maintenance. And so that really killed me. But, but the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was, and that's what I'm going to talk about next as I talk about Dallas, is the demographic of tenants that I had. Most of my tenants were either in retail or they were contractors, plumbers, electricians, drywallers, painters, roofers, you name it. And that business fell off a cliff in 2008. Nobody had work. And so that was it. And I was mentioning to you in the Q&A, I was at a 30% loan to value in 2007. I actually went upside down. That's how much the values dropped in by 2009, more than 70%. So now, hit me once, shame on you. Hit me twice, it's my own damn fault. And so I pay very close attention to the employment demographics. So like Dallas, of course, Dallas is not even the greatest example. It's so big that you're going to have this. I look for employer diversity, industry diversity. I look for pandemic-resistant employment. Like we bought an asset in Cincinnati, 280 doors, probably about 8-9 months ago. And I literally looked where every single resident worked, 280 of them. Wow. And I sat and I kind of gauged, what their, resistance would be to a recession and that employer. And so we want to see, again, employment resistant industries, factories that likely wouldn't be impacted, things of that nature. So that's very important. And of course, there's tons of that in
this
Dallas.
Is all the due diligence that you do, and you and your team do on every deal. You're looking at all this data.
Yes. And so, and the other thing is, Texas is pro landlord. Okay, I mean it's a pretty red state. It's about as red as it gets, like Florida, where I'm from.
Understanding the environment, the political environment of where you're investing, and the states and the council members,
very
and what their stances are on people taking the risk and owning real estate is very, very, very
and the
important.
direction it's headed.
And where it's
I
going,
mean, it's very possible
Right.
that there could be rent control here in Colorado at some point, like they have in New York, like is being presented in California.
Right.
So pay attention to where it's headed too.
It's huge.
Yeah, but the other, so the area checked off all the boxes. The submarket checked off all the boxes. It was near other assets, like the Millennium asset that we have, 208 doors. It's almost all one bedrooms. Now, I would normally not buy an asset like that. I like to see about double the number of 2 bedrooms to the 1 bedrooms that we have. That's just a mix that I like to see. But those 1 bedrooms are perfect for that submarket, and they're big. They've got fireplaces. They're beautiful units, and that property's been 100% occupied since we bought it. But we have nowhere to send the people that need 2 and 3 bedrooms, and so that asset fills that need. So we can send people there as well. It's only 3 minutes away. But then I was telling you about the person we bought the asset from. Well, because they do so much institutional debt, they got incredible financing on Cottonwood, and it was an incredible interest rate, and we were able to assume that loan. It was like 2.5%, I think, is what it was.
Wow.
Yeah. So incredible loan. Now we had to raise more equity, but we raised, I think, $16 million in 5 days. I mean, I started my podcast.
So talk a little bit about that. How you have people out there that are like, I really want to be an operator, I want to be a syndicator. Give us your 5-minute deal on raising capital. What are 2 or 3 tips that you give people that want to raise $16 million in 5 days is incredible.
Yeah, you have to create reach, and that's one of the things that I teach my students, and I teach at the boot camp. You got to hang your shingle. You have to figure out a name for yourself, and most company names end in capital or equity, or like ours. My new one is CRE Equity Capital, and the website is creecapital.com, So you've got to create a brand, okay? You start with the brand, but then you've got to figure out how you're going to create reach. But you guys, we live in the greatest time in history for creating reach.
Yes.
I mean, look at my freaking podcast, 10 million downloads. I never planned to do that. I had no idea it was going to go crazy like that. My YouTube channel got watched for 40,000 hours last year, just by putting my interviews there. 203,000 views, which isn't a big deal in the YouTube world. Things go viral, millions of views, but in the multifamily space, it's not bad. And so you've got to, if once you create your brand, you've got to come up with how you're going to create reach. Could it be LinkedIn channel? It could be Facebook, could be Instagram, could be, what the hell's the
TikTok.
other one? TikTok.
TikTok. Don't forget about TikTok.
There's Clubhouse. There's all these places where you can create reach. So, but here's the key. There's 2 keys to doing this. Number 1 is you have to be consistent. If you're going to podcasts, I've helped tons of my students start podcasts, meetup groups. In fact, if you listen to my podcast early on, most of these people that have thousands of doors started with their own meetup group. That's how they raised money. That was how they did it. It was pre really social media becoming big. And so you have all these things, but there's 2 things you got to do. One, you have to be consistent. If you're going to start it, just realize you're going to do it every week until you're successful.
For years.
For years.
Commit to it, right?
Commit. Like you started a podcast in 2010. You have to commit. Now, you don't have to have 10 million downloads like I do. I think we're at 50,000 listeners, sets of ears at this point. You don't have to have that. You need maybe 1,000, and you can do that if you're consistent. But the second thing is you got to add value. We talked about adding value. If you put out crap, you are crap. Okay, so there it is. And I stole that line from somebody else, so don't give me credit for that. But the bottom line is you got to add value. But see, the beautiful thing is as well, and I tell my students this: you can act as if. Okay, you can fake it till you make it. So if you start a meetup group, you just bring in operators that are successful, and by virtue of you being the host, you've got perceived authority, even if you haven't, you're not even sure what a NOI is yet. Okay, and even being a podcast host, same thing. You can bring on guests that are super qualified and just come up with some intelligent questions to ask, but you got to create reach. So that's how you raise the money, so that if you're adding value and you're making people's lives better and you're educating them, when you bring up a deal, it's almost like somebody said that used the word convince someone to on a question.
How do I convince an investor? Was on the Q&A.
Yeah, right. If you've added so much value, you don't have to convince them. You just say, "Hey, I've got this deal. If anybody's interested, reach out to me." You have a mechanism for them to do that. And the money part's the easy part at that point, because you've added so much value. People are used to hearing your voice. Now, here's the other thing: pick a modality that you enjoy communicating in.
Yes.
If you're an auditory person, then maybe it's a podcast. If you're visual, maybe it's doing video. If you're if you're kinesthetic, maybe it's writing a blog post every week. Whatever it is. And I would also suggest that you cross-pollinate your content. If you're going to do a podcast, have it transcribed, throw it on YouTube, have it everywhere, throw it on LinkedIn, throw it on Instagram, throw it everywhere so that it's all over the place. But pick a vehicle that you would enjoy, because you're going to be doing it for a long time. But you want to enjoy it as well. I never thought I would actually enjoy the podcast, and I freaking love it. But I never thought I would, actually, because I'm not a patient person, and I'm locked in and all that. But
your podcast is incredible. I mean, I can't tell you how many episodes I've listened to, and just different seasons of my career where I've been like, oh man, what he just said and the questions he asked is exactly what I needed to hear. So definitely Lifetime Cash Flow. Check it out.
Thank you.
I mean, if you're into multifamily, you want to grow your business, or you're just getting started, definitely check it out. So
appreciate that.
I personally have an interest in the 16 million. So how many investors made up the 16 million, and did you guys host a webinar? I mean, how were you able to do that in 5 days?
In fact, these are the pages from the webinar. I just because listen, I'm old and I forget what I had for breakfast, let alone the nuances of a particular deal. But these are the pages from the webinar. So we always do a webinar, and I put it. And here's the thing. Is we only deal with accredited investors, and I assume you've told people what the definition of accredited is on the show. I know you do that, but even if you're not accredited, when I post that we're going to do a webinar, I say I don't care if you have no money, come watch us do this, so you know how we present a deal, so you know what we look for in a market, in a sub market, so that we know how we analyze and evaluate a deal, how we stress test it, what we look for and so that you become better at it. So I don't care if you're accredited or not, come watch the webinar, which we're legally allowed to let them watch because it's education. It truly is. So, so we do that and then try to educate on that webinar as well. But we just go through, we start obviously with the area and the MSA, the Metropolitan Service Area, then the sub-market, then we drill into the asset, then we drill into the finances, the financial part of the deal, the capital stack and the pro forma and the projected returns that we anticipate. And it's again, we have hundreds of people watch those webinars, and probably, a big chunk of them aren't accredited, but they're learning the business. And one of the things, by the way, that we have our students do, once they've, kind of gotten their feet underneath them a little bit, is we have them do a market presentation to us, to the Warrior Group. So we've got 3 of them queued up right now where they're, maybe it's Dallas. Okay, tell us why you love Dallas. Do a market presentation with a PowerPoint, why you love Dallas. And, we want to hear employment. We want to hear unemployment. We want to hear, the highlights of that area. You better be able to rattle off the 10 top things in the market you're interested in. What are potential pitfalls in that market? What employers are there? What's the employment diversity look like? Because ultimately, if you're going to pick a market and invest in it, you're going to have to do a market presentation anyway, and you just add on the property and you're off to the races, right? So that's one of the things we have them do. Anyway, I'm rambling.
I actually love that you do it with your students. You have, for game day, you prep them. Because you're out of a lot of people, I'll do this. I will step up to the plate when it's time to do it. No, you're only as best as your best training day is. At best, a lot of times you're a few levels worse in your training. I love it. They actually make
they present to the Warrior Group, and of course we always start by telling them what's awesome. Okay, otherwise they don't hear the rest of it. So you start by telling them what was awesome about the presentation, and then you give the constructive feedback, because then they can hear it. And and some are real good and some are not. And so, but I can tell you the ones we do are really top shelf, and so they're a great kind of example of what to do.
Sets the bar high.
Yeah, and the other thing that we do, like at my boot camps for people that are trying to raise money, is we give them an example of a sample deal package, and that they can emulate, and so they can go to an investor and say, hey, this is the kind of stuff we look for. If we find something like this, are you interested? And it's, for the people that aren't the greatest communicators, it's a tool that they can use to go talk to
help
investors.
Facilitate that ask,
to start the conversation and have something to hand them, and
all that was super valuable.
Yeah,
but I still want to know, out of the 16 million, how many people, just give me a round number. How many people are they $50,000, $100,000 checks?
No. 100,000 is pretty much the minimum.
The minimum.
It's a special occasion or a special circumstance.
So these are larger checks, 250, 500.
Yeah,
Okay.
some of that. And I think we had one GP put in a couple million.
Okay.
And if somebody puts in a significant chunk, they can participate in the GP.
Okay.
It was a student, I believe, if I recall. They run together for me sometimes. But if someone puts up enough money, we'll allow them into the general partnership. And if they're a good fit for us, if we feel like we can work with them and whatnot, and with or without, typically they won't have control, but they have to participate in some fashion.
And did you do any phone calls after the webinar? Or is it the webinar and you're getting commitments and it's filled? Or how much?
You have to follow up with people,
Okay.
and we've got a team for that
Okay.
calls and say, hey, you've got to finish your paperwork. And
Got it.
And I can tell you, we oversubscribed that thing, and you should always oversubscribe because people.
You talked about this before. That was great. You always take more money.
You don't always take more money. You always take commitments for more money. And because people will not always follow through. And I can tell you, and you tell them it's first come, first serve. You get your money in. If you've committed to the money, you get your money in. And I can tell you, the ones that don't get in are first in line next time. I can tell you that. And so, but you oversubscribe because otherwise you could get caught in a lurch, and luckily right now raising the money is the easiest part. Finding the deals is the hardest part. But you've got to have someone following up on the paperwork and making sure that
it's like herding cats, getting the sub docs in, getting the
pushing
cat.
a rope, pushing a rope. It is, but again. Once you've closed down and there's a handful of people didn't get in,
they missed out.
Oh yeah. That's like being at the rope trying to get into the nightclub.
Right.
It's that dynamic, right? So
it's a big learning lesson.
Right.
Yeah, they self-regulate for the next one. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about the return profile on this deal. What does the cash on cash look like? And what is the IRR, and what do you think the
So we've got a pref, which is a preferred return. So let me explain that, if unless you've explained it ad nauseum on the show.
No, go for
it. Yeah, do it.
So a preferred return is, you'll bring in your investors, and they will get the first percentage of any cash flow. And in this particular asset was 8%. So it's called a pref. So they get 8% before anybody else gets anything. Then there's a split after that 8%, and in this case it was a 50-50 split. And so anything over and above the 8% on their invested capital is split 50-50. Now, once they get that capital back, then they no longer get that preferred return. And so our model is we will go in and do a value add play in this particular asset. I'll go into that in a minute, but we're gonna improve it, and we're gonna raise the rents. And then our model is we refinance within a 3 to 5 year period and get our investors most or all their money back. And then whatever they still have in, they'll still get their 8% on, but whatever they get back, they won't. That'll be a return of capital. And then after that, everything over and above that split 50-50. Now, our projected cash on cash on this asset is 10 to 12%. Annualized over the 5 year period. Now, the first year or two, it might be 6, 7, 8%, but then it increases after we've done our reposition, and that's our minimum. It really is a 10% annualized cash on cash. We won't over a 5 year period. That is our minimum. But
which you can't find anywhere.
No,
you
but
can't
don't
find
forget.
that anywhere.
Well, we're finding them, but we're kissing a lot of freaking frogs.
Cash on cash anywhere else.
No.
I mean, in the CD, you're under 1%. Money market, you're under.
Forget it. Yeah, and our IRR is 15%. But here's another tip. Under promise and over deliver every time, okay? And that's so we are conservative in what we say we're going to get, unlike some people out there. We want to under promise and over deliver because, if you tell somebody something and you come in a point less, they're pissed off. You come in a point more, you've got them for life. And so, this is what we do now.
That's so great right there. I think we need to repeat that. A point under and they're pissed off.
Oh, they are.
A point over.
And they're thrilled.
You have them for life.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you always want to underpromise and overdeliver. Now, the other thing you've got to do, especially in this hot market, is you've got to stress test. Okay? What if? So we won't do a deal unless it'll break even at 25% vacant day one. We won't do it. We won't do a deal if after we refinance and pull our money out and we've got the higher cash flow, higher NOI, it needs to break even at 35% vacant. So those are a couple of pretty stiff stress tests. Now, the other thing is we raise significant operating reserves. Again, hit me once, shame on you. I'm very, very conservative. I want to be able to sleep at night. So the minimum we raise, in addition to that mandatory Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac P&I reserve,
Right.
we can talk about that if you want, but we raise a minimum 6 months of expenses, operating reserve, minimum. In some cases, a lot more.
Wow.
On that Cincinnati asset, because it was a C asset, we raised $1.5 million. Just sitting there, just in case what hits the fan.
Which hurts the return, but
Sure it does.
gives you the security.
But we still have the returns,
Right.
and because luckily because I have the podcast and I'm in tens of thousands of years a week. And people send us deals,
Right.
and so I have my 500 plus warriors bringing deals in, and so I'm kind of in a unique position, and you guys will be as soon as this thing really gets cranking as well, to have deals coming at you, and it's a nice thing, and so but those are returns, and in fact here it's broken down. It's 8.8% is our projected first year, 10.1, and then it just goes up to 14.3 in year 5.
And that was the cash on cash?
Cash on cash, yeah. And so here's our business plan. So we've got below market rents there. And so we're going to increase to market, obviously. And we've got an incredible management team there, incredible management
And
presence.
they're working on your other properties.
Yes.
So you already had the synergy there.
Yes.
You had the
Yes.
track
Yes.
record and
Yes.
the confidence.
And how much do you need to do the property bring up to market? Is it just raise the rents or full remodels?
No.
What's it
I'll
like?
go into that.
Okay.
So some of the interiors have been moderately upgraded over the last 5 years, but the new renovated units that they did prior will be our classics. And then we're going to basically take this from a B asset to an A asset, and that's what we try to do. We try to bring it up one asset class, and that's our ultimate goal every time, is to try to bring it up, one asset class. And so that's the case here. So let me talk about some of the things we're doing here. So we're going to do exterior upgrades, painting, landscaping, concrete. We're going to do some interior upgrades, faucets, LVT flooring. We're going to do bathroom renovations, and then some other things that we're going to do that the current management wasn't doing. Is we're going to have an incredible lead capture system, and continue to push rents on the renewals. But that's pretty much it. And so the goal is to do a supplemental in 3 to 5 years, and supplemental loan, which you can do, and get our investors, again, the lion's share of their
What's
capital
a supplemental loan?
So Fannie Mae has what's called a supplemental. It's basically a second mortgage, like in the single family world. It's a second mortgage, but they're an incredible rate typically, and they underwrite of course the whole property. Now the beautiful thing about commercial multifamily, is the bank is looking at the property's ability to service the debt, not the team, as it were. And so, and they have what's called a debt service coverage ratio.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'd like, I can describe that real quick if you'd like, unless
Yes.
you've gone over it. Okay, well, so properties, the thing about commercial multifamily, guys, is it's valued based on a multiple of the net income. It's called the net operating income. So you've got the property income from all sources, less the property-related expenses, not debt, not the mortgage, but property income less property-related expenses, taxes, maintenance, management, all that stuff, equals the NOI, the net operating income. Now, any increase in that NOI equates to about a $17 to $20 increase in value instantly. I'll give you a couple examples. We've got a 101-unit asset in Beaver Creek, Ohio, which is a Dayton suburb. And this kind of a crazy story. It actually got destroyed in a tornado. All 101 families had to move. Thank God nobody died. But I remember I flew up there the day after it happened, and this lady was bringing her wet clothes out, and she said her son was up in the bedroom, and thank God they had the early warning system, and his phone went off, and he went down the stairs, and by the time she was sleeping on the couch, by the time he woke her up, his bedroom was gone.
Wow.
Now we had 2 serious injuries. They're both okay, but they had surgery, but thank God no kids got hurt. But anyway, so 101 families. Now we are getting a $650 rent bump there. Okay.
Because you built it brand new.
Well, it's the same, but it's brand new.
Right.
Okay. But granite, we put in granite and some other things, and we opened up the kitchens a little bit and stuff, and just dressed it up. $650 rent bump. Let's just use $500 as an example. A $500 rent bump is a $10 million instant increase in value. So this will probably be about $12 million as soon as it's full occupied. We're at 75% now, and it's really cranking up now. That Dallas asset, that Millennium asset, That's the one that we already own that was on 1 bedrooms and stuff. We got a $250 rent bump there. On 208 units, that's a $10 million bump increase in value. And guys,
that's the power of multifamily.
That's
right
the
there.
freaking power of commercial multifamily.
Every single dollar is worth $20.
With residential multifamily, duplex, triplex, fourplex, 2-family, 3-family, 4-family, if you're Northeast, the values are based on comparable sales. So you can't really ramp them like you can in commercial, but 5 units plus is commercial, and the value's based on a multiple of the net income. Any increase to that net income is an exponential increase to value. So that's why we freaking love this business. Why? Because you can force the value. You can, by your efforts, you can increase the rents or decrease the expenses. And so let's say maybe you've got, like somebody posted in my Facebook group, the big one, I've got a property where the owner pays all the utilities. I'm like, okay, that could be a ka-ching, because you bill back those utilities, it goes right to the bottom line. Instant increase in value.
And that's an easy one to do.
And that's an easy one. Yeah, and so it's not just always income, it can be expenses as well. But let's say you've got a property that has some vacant land, or it's got basements that could be turned into storage units, or you could put in covered parking, or charge pet rent and they've never charged pet rent. Or have valet trash where you have a maintenance guy pick up their trash every Thursday and throw it in the dumpster for them. And you charge $20, $30, $40. Do the math on it. It is freaking staggering what it does to the value. And so again, that's why we love this business, because you can force the appreciation. So this one is a 2 to 3 year, we're not ramping it really fast, only because we're not going to move people out, because it's already got a good tenant base. The one on North Creek, we're putting a new demographic in. It's a tougher demographic. That's one we just purchased at the end of last year. Actually, in December we bought that one, and that one we're going to have a new demographic. So it'll probably be a whole new.
And you're using this. Go ahead. You're using the same property manager on all 3?
Well, we have a property management company,
okay,
and we took those in house.
Okay.
So yeah. But and then these assets are close to jobs. They're close to transportation. They're you're always looking for amenities. You want shopping nearby. What are the schools like? How are the schools rated? You want to look at crime. Like, we put cameras in every unit. We typically put gates in every one. We secure the perimeter. And you want to look at the sight lines, and will people feel safe if they're walking home? Single woman feel safe walking to her unit. So we look at all that, and and of course, before we raise rents, we always improve the curb appeal. We start doing exterior repairs, so they see that we're working on the place. And then the increases are more palatable. But it's a beautiful business. Freaking love it.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the fact that every single dollar to the NOI is worth roughly $20 on the back end is insane. I mean, that's what makes it really, really, exciting. And, because there is a housing shortage in most of these big markets, people need housing. People need a place to live. And if you can do a good job taking care of them, you can, be really accommodating on maintenance, and you're responsive and you communicate, and you just do the fundamentals. If you just do the fundamentals,
take care of them, they won't
exactly.
move. And you can even create a culture there at your asset where, like we'll have breakfast on the go, where we'll have the team stand by the gate and hand them a bag with a bagel and cream cheese in it as they're driving out, or have a pizza party at the pool, or have popcorn in the leasing office for the kids to come by and get, or you create this culture and you take care of them. If they've got a legitimate maintenance request, you fix it right away. If they've screwed up a blind because the kids threw a football in it, then maybe that takes a few days. But the point is, and you charge them for that if they did it. But you take care of them, because your biggest expense by far is turnover. If you can minimize the turnover, it's staggering what it does to the bottom line. And so, if you see an asset that's got a lot of turnover, if the units themselves are decent size and they're decent shape, it's almost always the management. They're doing a crappy job. They're letting people go without air conditioning or whatever. And if you take care of that, and so when we do our weekly asset management calls, one of the things we ask is, how long are the work orders in play? What's the turnover on the? What's the completion time on the work orders? How many are over 24 hours old, and why? I want to know why. and then we always follow up to see if they're satisfied with the repair.
So that's a metric you follow.
Yeah, that's one of the KPIs. It's called a key performance indicator. It's like it's a metric. That's another word for a metric, and that's one of the ones we're looking at. Upcoming vacancy. We're looking at lease expirations. We got a bunch of leases expiring on the same month. That's a red flag, especially if it's in the dead of winter. And so what we might do is do 13, 14, 15, 16-month leases to scatter that out and have most of them come due in prime leasing times. So we're looking at that. We're looking at upcoming vacancy. We're looking at any anomalies. It's called an exception report. Any anomalies when we're talking to the manager. In our case, it's in-house for most of our assets now. But if we're talking to a third-party property management company, that's one of the questions we ask, and we look at the cash. How much cash of that's the number one thing. How much cash have they collected for the month? Where are they at? What's the budget? What do they project? And that's the number one thing. Obviously, what do the delinquencies look like? How many people? What's the amount of delinquency? So these are the KPIs that we're looking at, the metrics, as you call it.
Yeah, a huge one is just maintenance and maintenance response time directly relates to renewals, and renewals directly relate to vacancy, and you have to really be on top of maintenance. And that's one of the things that my brother and I and our property management team, you have to be very, very intentional about staying on top of that, because it's the renewals are directly related to that. It's everything.
It's everything. Yeah, and it's asset management. Now, and this is a confusion for many people that don't know the business. There's property management where you're on site dealing with the property, and then the asset management is managing the property managers. Okay, so that's called asset management, and you charge for that. I mean, there's lots of ways to make money in this business. We charge an asset management fee, but it's typically 2% of the gross collected rent, and you earn every freaking penny of it. Charge an acquisition fee, typically 3%. Sometimes that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if you're talking to an investor and they give you a hard time about that, you just say next. So I can tell you, sometimes managing your investors is harder than managing the freaking asset. And if they're going to give you a hard time about you making a dime, then forget it. Because again, right now we're kissing 300 frogs to find a deal. We have deals that we go all the way through due diligence and back out of, and that's a lot of money. And so we earn every penny of that acquisition fee. And
you got to be conservative. You got to be selective. There's so much money out there chasing deals, and
there
people
are
stupid
stupid deals being done right now.
Oh, yeah.
We'll be in best and final on a deal, and we're like, holy crap! Look what that's traded for. It's called traded for. What it sold for. We're like, how could they possibly pay that much? I mean, so there's going to be some deals go south too.
Right.
We haven't talked about that. I feel like there's going to be a correction at some point here. I mean, real estate goes through cycles. I've been through them here. I was telling the girls before we got started about an example of one up on 30th and Federal here, back in the late 80s. Let me share that because it's really...
Go ahead.
So there was I'm not going to say the address because we're in Denver here, but 30th and Federal was a two-story house built in maybe the 20s, and I paid $56,000 for it. Flipped it, sold it for $76,000. This is in the late 80s, okay?
These are unbelievable numbers.
The house is worth $980,000 now.
It is. You stole my freaking thunder, man.
Oh, sorry. I was just giving context to the audience.
Yeah, it's in Highlands. It's in Highlands. But listen. So I sold it for 76. Market crashed. I bought it back for 18. Okay?
Nice.
Sold it for 160. Now it's worth almost $1 million. Right. Okay, so real estate goes through cycles, like they're like cycles in life, like weather. There's summer, winter, fall. And we've been in summer a long time, and so to think that there's not going to be a pullback at some point is naive, especially with what's happening economically, politically, and it may be an inflation thing, but there's no better hedge against inflation than cash flowing real estate, because if the rents go up because of inflation, your debt's not going to go up. So it's a fantastic hedge, but I'm getting in a lot of cash right now because I really do think that there's going to be a correction soon.
So you're sitting some on the sidelines, but you're still buying, right?
Oh yeah, if the numbers make sense, if you stress test it, 25% vacant day one, you're pretty good.
So do you have a crystal
in the
ball?
depths of 2008, it only pulled back about 11% nationally. Multifamily did.
Right.
And multifamily recovered to higher than 2006 rents in 3 years after the crash. I mean, that's how resilient multifamily is.
Because of the shortage of affordable housing. People needed a place to live, and the jobs came back. And I do believe if you do the appropriate amount of research on the market, and you see the diversity of the job growth, which you talked about, and the employers, even if there is a dip. I mean, we just went through a pandemic, and a lot of markets didn't even see a rent decrease. In Denver,
No.
I mean, I would say maybe Aurora had, 6, 7, 8% less in rent, but the rest of the market in Denver, we were still leasing buildings at pro forma rents through the pandemic in certain parts of the city.
Yep.
And so if you're really intentional about where you're buying and you understand the demographic,
and you pay attention to it. See, my podcast is called Lifetime Cash Flow because, what else can you buy that someone else pays off for you? Okay. And so, I had my first interview was with a guy named Albert Barras, and I love giving him a shout out because he's a beautiful human being, but he's got like 20,000 doors. He owns them all. His company owns them all. He doesn't syndicate. They're all his. Anyway, but he coined this phrase. He said, "I'm a real estate buyer. I'm not a seller." And so, if you buy and you pay attention to the area and it doesn't decline, why would you ever freaking sell? Okay. Now that asset that we bought, that Cottonwood, I asked him, I said, "Why'd you sell? That thing's gorgeous." He goes, "Because we had some private equity and they wanted to sell." So, that's so you can be
sometimes your capital is the one that
sometimes your
controls,
capital
right?
will dictate when you sell. But the point is, I'm about buying as much stuff as possible and paying it off, and that's some cash flow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This has been amazing. The Tribe of Multifamily Mentors, Rod Khleif, the guru of coaches and multifamily and just real estate in general. This has been fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
One of the questions we like to ask everyone is, how have mentors played a role in your career? And I know you've been a mentor to so many people. Maybe talk about maybe one or two of the key mentors in your life and what those have meant to you.
Well, unfortunately, I wasn't smart enough to get mentors when I did real estate, so I made every possible mistake. I mean, I get T-shirts that say "Pound, ask me how I know," because I use that phrase all the time. Right. Don't do this. Ask me how I know. But I think one of my biggest mentors was Tony Robbins. In fact, let me share a story with you real quick. So, I talked about that house I built on the beach, right? And I mean, this place was magnificent. Okay, let me describe it a little more because it ties to the story here. So, I worked for this thing for 20 years. Okay, it had a big spiral staircase up through the middle of the house. I had a waterfall from the second floor balcony into the pool. You had to walk through the waterfall to get into the pool. It had, tens of thousands of dollars worth of trees that I bought that bent out over the pool and then went up. Wine cellar, elevator. I had an aquarium on the second floor that wrapped the spiral staircase. The aquarium cost me almost $200,000. So it gives you an idea of the house. Anyway, I worked for this thing for 20 freaking years, okay? 2 months after I moved in, I'm floating in the pool at night. It's changing colors at night. I'm changing colors, and I'm looking up at this testament to my ego, because that's really what it was. I built this house to prove the world I was good enough. And we talked about this a little bit with limiting beliefs earlier. And I'm looking up at this thing, and I got depressed. And I don't mean just a little bummed. I mean, I was really freaking bummed. I'm like, what the hell? How could I possibly be depressed? I've just achieved a success like times 1,000. And when I look back on it, there were several things going on. One was you should never achieve a big goal, and this ties into the goal setting conversation, so I'm glad you sparked that memory. You should never achieve a big goal without having other goals lined up behind it, because like the good book says, without a vision, the people perish. You need a vision for your future. And I didn't know what I was going to do next. So that was number one. Number two is it's never about the goal. You need the goals. That's how you create that burning desire. You need to know why those goals are a must. You need that to take action, but it's never about the goals. It's about who you become in pursuit of those goals, and the goals don't make you happy. They say, what's the happiest days of a boat owner's life? The day he buys it and the day he sells it, right? Okay, the goals don't make you happy, but what makes you happy is continual progress and growth. Happiness comes from progress and growth. And so, again, I didn't know what I was going to do next, but the big one was, I've been totally focused on Rod. Show the world I matter. Show the world I'm good enough. And luckily, you asked me about mentors. I bought some books. I got Dale Carnegie, Zig Ziglar at the time, Tony Robbins, and I read one of Tony's books. I'm like, holy shit, I'm really liking this. So I didn't even finish the book, and I went to one of his boot camps. It was in Fort Lauderdale. It's over 20 years ago. And I found out that he fed families for the holidays. And I'm like, what a concept. Do something for someone else. I'm embarrassed to say I was 40 before I got that memo. And so I went back and I flew to Denver. I was in Florida, but I flew to Denver and I told my brother, let's feed 5 families. So we went to his church. We found out who really needs help. Third family changed my life. It was northwest Denver. It was a row house where it was like 4 units But they weren't even one bedrooms. You walk through, you've seen these where you walk into the living room, you walk through the bedroom to get to the kitchen, which has the bathroom off of it. Okay,
Yep.
it's a crappy one bedroom. There's a woman in there with 4 kids. This is Northwest Denver. So we bought big boxes of food. We did this for Thanksgiving. I do it for Christmas now, but we did it for Thanksgiving. Bought big boxes of food. We found out if they had kids. We got toys for the kids. We got frozen turkey, roasting pan. Assume they didn't have a roasting pan. And so we show up. We're on her porch. She comes out and she sees the boxes of food and the toys, and she starts crying. Her kids come out. The older ones start crying. I start crying, and I'm freaking hooked. And I'm blessed to say, over the last 20 plus years, we have fed 100,000 kids with my foundation. And I paid for it every year up until 2008, and it was $50,000 that year. Now I formed a foundation. It's called the Tiny Hands Foundation, but I pay for all the operational expenses and then some. Every dime goes to the food. But the other thing we do is we do backpacks filled with school supplies. It's astounding to me. We live in the greatest freaking country on earth, and kids don't even have basic school supplies.
Yep.
And so we do backpacks. I've done tens of thousands of those. I've done tens of thousands of teddy bears. So we give police departments for their officers to put in their vehicles, so when they encounter a child, in a bad situation, they can comfort the child. And the reason I bring this up, guys, is not to brag again, okay? What I want to tell you is I know some of you listening have blood dripping from your teeth. You want this freaking success so bad. I'm here to tell you that success without giving back is not success. I've interviewed billionaires on my show, mega millionaires, and I can tell if they're like I was back then. They're totally focused on themselves. They're not focused on making the world a better place. And I can sense it, even if they're good at hiding it. And I feel sorry for them because, we're taught to achieve to be happy, so we're taught to achieve to be happy, right? I'm going to tell you, if you're giving back, you're happily achieving. And you get there much freaking faster. And I don't know if we talked about this on the Q&A or afterwards, but whatever you give, you get back, period. Whatever it is. And so, so those of you listening, even if you're thinking, yeah, when I have the money, I'll do it, big mistake. You will get the money faster if you do it. Now, you don't do it for that reason, okay? But if you do, you'll get there faster. And so pick a cause. Children, the elderly, the environment, animals, whatever it is, and give to that cause in some fashion, some small way, and you'll be happily achieving.
Yeah, that's amazing. I totally agree, and it is much more rewarding. I think the Bible says that to give than receive, and you do feel much more fulfilled. And there's so many times where you reach your goal, or that I have, in sports or in business or, anything in life that you think you want that's going to make you happy, and you get that, and it's like, man, really, this isn't that great. And it's like what you said, it's about the journey and the process and what you become and what you learn and the growth. Yeah, that's really well said.
And I want to iterate, you nailed it. I learned this, similar to what you did. Just if you don't have another goal after that next goal, you got to have the dominoes lined up. You got to, hey, cool, I get this one down. Now I'm working towards this. Then this. Otherwise, it's just you get lost.
Yeah.
So the second question we'll ask everyone is, what is your superpower?
Yeah, you pre-framed that for me, and I'm struggling with it. I think because I didn't go to college. And in fact, I barely graduated high school. I went to Random High School here in Westminster, and I barely graduated, almost flunked out. But I'm a voracious reader, and I've got thousands of books. I've got a library of room bigger than this. It's all the walls are covered with books.
Wow.
And because of my love of reading, I have a pretty good vocabulary, and I'm able to communicate what my thoughts are in a fairly articulate, quick, and congruent way. And I think that's probably my superpower, is my ability to deconstruct what someone is saying. Like, in fact, my podcast, I have like 1,200 reviews, and I'm at 4.5 stars, which kills me because I irritate the people if I'm interviewing a guest and they say something that I know most of my listeners do not know what it is, I will stop them and say, hey, let me explain what that means. So the only hate I get is stop interrupting your guests. But I get excited and I interrupt for that too. But the point is, I think it's that ability to communicate things in a way that people get. Okay. And I'm able to simplify it and communicate it. So I think that's probably it. Yeah.
I also would add to that your energy.
Oh, thank you.
Your superpower is definitely your energy. You have incredible energy.
Thanks, bud.
Oh, it raises the room.
Yeah, it raises the room.
If you guys ever have the privilege to be in the same room, whether it's, we're very fortunate to where we can sit with a few people in the room, at conference or whatever, like you're one of those people, you walk in the room,
no,
you go up a few notches.
Very kind of you guys.
And you can just feel it. That's something we talked about, I think, when you were walking out earlier, like, wow, you actually bump up the energy, which I don't know how you do it, but it's an amazing superpower.
Because I love it.
We need to figure out what's in that
love it.
coffee mug. Is what we need.
Yeah, what's really in this mug over here?
It ties into freaking loving what you do, guys. You guys have incredible energy too, and it's when you love what you do, it just comes out. You know, and that's why it's so freaking important. Don't have any regrets, guys. Like that, the Bronnie Ware's book. Life is too short for regret, and so, when you love what you do, work is play, and you never work a day in your life.
Yeah. You know what, Rod? This has been a pleasure.
Thank you.
I mean, you can rarely say that we have a mentor of mentors for multifamily, of multifamily investors on here, but we can check that off the list, Terrence. So this has been fantastic. Thank you, man.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rod.
You're listening to the Multifamily Mentor Show.
Join the conversation.